Oh, wait, you're listening?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
You're
Listening
to Radiolab.
Radio
From
WNYC.
See?
Yeah.
I'm Lulu Miller.
And I'm Latif Nasser. This is Radiolab.
How should we start?
You probably should lead with the big news from yourself.
Okay. The big news, which I actually just found out is particularly big. I am very, very pregnant. I have a extra big baby inside. I just found out at the doctor. Which means I will be, sort of disappearing from the regular rhythm here for a little bit. Although we've preloaded some things, I'll pop in and out. But also it means that I am past my fly safe date. So I am not allowed to fly anywhere.
Right.
But you flew and you got to do an event with our resident ER doctor correspondent, Veer Mitra.
Yep.
And I truly know nothing except that I had total FOMO and authentic jealousy because you're both so shiny and fun on stage. But we're going to get to hear about it now, right?
Right. Okay, so let me set the stage a little bit. So the place we performed at was our kind of WNYC's very own live space called the Green Space.
Yep.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. I am your friendly neighborhood Radiolab host, Latif Nasser.
And basically what this came out of, okay, so people probably remember the stories that Veer has done on this show. He did one about this mysterious epidemic of vultures dying. He did one about this miracle drug that they took out of the soil. Yeah. So he's done all these great stories, right? But he came to me with this idea of something kind of different.
Veer has been able to convince me, and hopefully with some special guest friends we have, he's going to be able to convince all of you that not only does he make saving a life look easy, that actually in this one particular way, it actually kind of is easy.
Basically, he wanted to take on, in a sort of straight-ahead, practical way, one particular topic and show how, in this one case, all of us, including you, Lulu, including you, listener, how you can be the difference between life and death.
Like a thing you could actually do.
It's a thing you could actually do to save a life.
Ooh, okay.
Okay,
Great.
so you ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
So is everybody excited? Please welcome to the stage Veer Mitra.
Thank you, guys.
All right, what are we going to do?
Just get going? Well,
Let's get going.
I guess I was kind of hoping we could start with a little story.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
So the story goes, there was a patient. She was a 78-year-old woman coming in from Jersey. It was her birthday. Her family took her to see a Broadway show. Husband's with her, some kids, some grandkids. And, while they're waiting in line, she sort of collapses. The family responds immediately. Like, they lay her flat. Okay, they start fanning her. Someone calls 911, literally in under a minute. They call 911. Ambulance comes in record time, and the EMS finds that she's actually in cardiac arrest. So she's in cardiac arrest. She comes to the hospital, and that's where I get involved in the story because I'm the resident there. And so I'm like a second-year resident, which means I know some things and I'm cocky about it, but I don't know what I don't know type of thing. So
Okay.
I'm seeing this patient come in, it's cardiac arrest, and I know my algorithms, and I'm like, ooh, I got this. So we start doing everything. We're doing chest compressions, we start IV, we put a line into her shin so we can put synthetic adrenaline in there. We're shocking the heart, we're putting her on a ventilator. We're doing all these things. We're working on the heart for like at least 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm there and I'm just like so eager about it. So we shock the heart. We look with an ultrasound. It's not beating. Shock it again. And eventually all of a sudden, boom, just like that, the heart restarts. Blood pressure is normal. All of a sudden, all these vital signs that were all beeping at me start looking great. And so I was super excited. The family's all around me. They're crying. And now they're crying. I tell them, she's back. And they're crying like tears of joy.
Wow.
They're like, wow, amazing. So the next step is now she's more stable. So now we have to bring her to get a CAT scan. So
So Veer had brought some visuals with him, and at this point, he showed us a slide of a CAT scan of a healthy brain.
This is kind of what a good CAT scan of a brain would look like. I know it's hard to see, but it's like a cross-section of a brain, okay?
Kind of looks like how you would picture a healthy brain with, folds and everything.
You got these nice black ventricles in the middle. You have all this nice brain matter there. To me, this is a beautiful picture. I don't know if you guys feel that way. But what I saw next was this.
Then he showed us the CAT scan of the brain of this patient, of Veer calls her Mrs. W. And this is what he saw in that moment.
And this sort of made my heart sink into my stomach.
It's just a blob. It's just a gray blob.
What I'm seeing here is that this brain is dead, completely dead.
Oh my God.
And I guess in my eagerness to sort of be the guy who knows what to do, I just sort of didn't even think about this. And now I have to go out and, talk to the family. And I just wanted to disappear. It was like a terrible, terrible moment for the family. And now I'm part of it. So I had to tell them, and I felt terrible because now I have to tell this family that actually your grandmom is brain dead. And now I had to sort of make them withdraw life support. And, and I felt like I wanted to save her life. And what I ended up doing was making her sort of die twice.
Oof. Well, how did the family take it? What?
They were very gracious about it. They were very nice. They were kind. They were like, you did everything you could. But it just sort of shook me out of this sort of immature kind of cockiness I had in the emergency department at the time.
Right.
So that sort of stuck with me forever, I guess. And I think about that case a lot.
But like, what went wrong? Like, why did it? Like, what did you do something wrong? Like, what happened?
Right. Well, let's table that, because if we do a good job tonight, I think by the end, you guys will know exactly what went wrong there.
Okay.
So we'll get there. But yeah, I guess that's sort of the impetus for why I wanted to do the show, because I was thinking in our society, we worry about so many things, we wake up in the morning, we start doom scrolling, and we worry about, we're worried about climate change. We're worried about gun control. We're worried about terrorism. But like really the reality is the majority of human beings die because of heart problems. It's not sexy, but it's just true. Like this is across the world.
So at this point, we're all looking at a graph of the leading causes of death worldwide. So like all the deaths that happen on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And number one is heart disease and heart failure.
Wow.
The number two is not even close.
Far and away, like down here we have terrorism.
Wow,
we have
yeah.
all climate change. I'm not putting any of these things down, like they're real. But fires, suicides, murders, HIVs, somewhere on this list. But cardiovascular disease, it's just insane.
We should allocate government budgets based on this graph. Okay.
But we do it based on
right.
what's the scariest looking,
Right.
And in America, it's a little better. It's only just 1 in 3 people will die of heart problems. So I don't know if you guys want, look to your right and to your left. Figure out which of the 3 of you is dying from your heart. It's one of the 3.
I'm just glad there's only 2 of us on stage. So.
Right. No. So when hearts do stop, if a heart stops and eventually when it stops, it can happen slowly or quickly, right? So if your heart starts to die slowly, that's good in a way, because at least you can, get your way to a hospital, see a doctor, make an appointment.
When you say slowly, like how slowly are you talking about?
I mean, I'm saying like, it's almost like if you're driving a car and the check engine light comes on. Like, you need to take it into the shop, but like, you can wait a couple hours, and maybe you can wait a couple days.
Right. Okay.
Right?
All right.
But sometimes your heart stops quickly. Like 1 minute it's working, the next second it stops working. And when that happens, we call that cardiac arrest, basically. Your heart arrested. And the thing about a heart stopping is basically that means you're dead. So like when we pronounce a death, we'll listen with a stethoscope to the heart. I'm sure you've seen that on TV and stuff. But actually this idea that a dead heart is a dead person kind of goes back as long as humans have been around. This is going to sound weird, but I was just reading Gilgamesh for some reason. Great book. I don't know.
How do you have time to read? I don't get it.
Okay, audiobook. It was an audiobook.
Okay, all right.
Audiobook of Gilgamesh.
All right.
I highly recommend it. Gilgamesh, turns out, is the oldest story that we know. It's like the first written story. And even in Gilgamesh, they sort of reference they say, what is this, someone dies in the story. What is this sleep which has seized you? You've turned dark and do not hear me. He touched his heart, but it beat no longer. So even then I was listening to it and I was like, oh wow, like even then 4,000 years ago, they knew that when someone doesn't have a heartbeat, they're dead. And as long as humans have known that, we've been trying to restart hearts. So there's this sort of been this practice of like reanimation, bringing a heart back from the dead that we've been working on for thousands of years. The oldest reference is actually, and we don't have to read the whole quote, but is in the Old Testament here. There's actually this guy, Elisha, does anyone know how to pronounce Elisha? Okay, so this guy, what was he, a prophet he's a prophet. So he did this. So there's this story of when he goes into someone's house, a boy's house, and he goes and sees that he's dead. So he goes in, closes the door behind him, prays, and then lays on top of the boy, puts his lips on the boy's lips, eyes to eyes, and just lays on him. Whoa. And then the boy's body grows warm. The boy sneezes and comes back to life.
He sneezes?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, okay, I didn't learn this technique in medical school.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
But wow. I guess it worked. I mean, in the Old Testament, they say it worked. Huh. So who knows if this really happened? I don't know. Do you think it really happened?
It says that he was alone with the boy in the room.
Yes.
With the door shut, so who knows?
Oh, boy.
True New York skeptic right there. All right. Yeah, so that, who knows? But in the modern era, we've been trying to do this for a long time. Actually, I don't know if any of you guys have seen this picture.
So this is it's a drawing, like an old drawing you'd see in like an old medical atlas or something.
Okay.
There's someone lying on the ground naked on their side.
Okay.
And then there's someone else sitting over top of that person.
And this guy puts a tube up this person's rectum.
Does he know you can't really get to the heart from there?
I'm not sure what they're thinking, but he takes a big drag of a cigarette or a cigar and blows the tobacco smoke into the rectum. This was called a tobacco smoke enema.
And what's the logic here? Like, why do they think this is...
All right, I did spend some time trying to put myself in this guy's shoes.
Okay.
And the best I can come up with is nicotine is kind of a stimulant.
Okay.
And the rectum has a lot of tissue, so maybe just blowing a bunch of nicotine at a bunch of tissue was thought to work,
Great, sure.
But it, no surprise to anybody here, it didn't really work. Actually, the phrase blowing smoke up your ass, that's where that came from.
Right. And from the guy next to him when he's like, this is working, right? And he's like, yeah, for sure it's working.
After a couple centuries a couple decades of this, it just became, blowing smoke up my ass. I get it. But we've tried other things even more recently, So like all things that I love in science, an answer kind of came from probably the most bizarre place that you could ever think of.
Okay.
This guy, Rudolf Bohm, he's a German guy.
Okay.
And this is 1878. So this guy is a pharmacologist, and he's studying chloroform.
I mean, this is the guy, the big bushy beard. This is kind of the guy that you've expected.
And I don't know why they invented chloroform, but he was experimenting on it. And the way he would experiment on it is to take cute cats and chloroform them. I know.
Just for fun.
Today he would be labeled a sociopath.
Okay, all right, okay.
But you could do that back then. So he would just kill these cats, or he would chloroform them. And the thing about chloroform is if you don't use enough, it really doesn't do anything. If you use too much, it kills the person. You got to get that happy medium.
Right.
And so I don't know if this is true, but this is what I think. He was spending too much money getting all these cats. He kept killing cats. So he's like trying to figure out how can I work on my budget here.
He's trying to reduce, reuse, recycle kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So what he sort of, by doing this over and over again, realizes is that if he chloroforms his cats too much, he could start squeezing the cat's chest for a few minutes, and then the cat would survive.
Wow. And that's the guy.
This is the guy.
This is how he figured this out.
So that happened. He publishes this, and then lo and behold, 20 years later, a young surgery resident is in the hospital. One of his patients dies, and he somehow heard about this and just tries it on a patient.
This is in Germany again? Or?
No, I think this was in the US.
Okay, yeah.
So or maybe England, I can't remember where it was. But this is 20 years later, so early 1900s. He just randomly tries it on a patient, and lo and behold, it works.
Wow.
So these are the first times that we were able to bring people back from the dead. And since then, we've progressed a very extremely long way. Now we have so many ways to do it. We almost take it for granted.
Right.
We can shock people back into a normal rhythm. We can give super strong medicines. We even have machines that will pump for the heart when the heart can't pump. I mean, we're so used to it, honestly, that in the OR and places, people will induce cardiac arrest just to test the heart so that they know what causes it to bring it back on certain patients.
Wow, it's like such a like it's now like a standard miracle. Like it's just
Exactly.
expected thing. That
It's like,
we're totally fine with.
cardiac
Right.
arrest, let's bring it
Right.
back. So I have a little video here that I think is cool. I don't know if you guys will think it's cool, but this is a heart. Oh, we got the music too. So this is them in the OR, and this is a normal heart that's beating in a weird rhythm. And all of a sudden, it goes into cardiac arrest. You'll see right here. They induce cardiac arrest. Now the heart is dead. It's dying as we speak.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And then you hear a shock charging. They shock the heart, and now it's back. And you can hear it by the way they're casually playing Bon Jovi in the background.
This guy's living on a prayer. I mean, it does feel like.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. But basically, it's like standard. This is no big deal. Right. So you would think at this point cardiac arrest would be like no big deal. Like you go into cardiac arrest, we got you.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's just not the case.
Turns out that if you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, on average, your chance of surviving, of living, is 8%.
Is 8%?
Yeah.
8%. Which, look at that another way. If your heart stops quickly anywhere in the world outside of a hospital, you basically have a 92% chance of just dying then and there, right?
Wow.
And that means that, like, I don't know, it's like you never had a chance to see a nurse, see a doctor. It's like you had died 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It's really no different.
But
and that's how a lot of people are still dying.
But is that a thing? Is that just a thing about the heart? Like the heart it can only be revived 8% of the time or something?
Right, yeah, exactly. You could think, is there something inherent to the heart, 8%? Turns out no, because it turns out there's a place in the world where you can have a cardiac arrest and you'd have like much better outcomes. So I don't know, do you want to take a guess where it is?
Like what's the ideal place to have a cardiac arrest?
Yeah, maybe
basically?
we should ask, like, do you guys have any, if
Okay,
you had
any
to have
guesses?
a cardiac arrest?
Hospital?
Hospital,
Where was that? I would
What?
think like a nursing home maybe?
nursing home.
Anywhere else? Just name places. Who knows? What's that? Denmark. Okay, that's
Denmark.
the gym
He knows
maybe?
something.
No?
Okay, so I'm going to shatter all your
Okay.
beliefs. The best place to have a heart attack is a casino. Yes.
And why is that?
So, it turns out that it's the perfect practice space for cardiac arrest. You have a lot of elderly people,
Okay.
right, at a casino.
Okay.
They periodically lose a lot of money and get very stressed.
Yeah, no kidding. Right.
And they often manage that stress by doing potentially unhealthy things like smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol.
Okay.
So cardiac arrests happen a lot at casinos, and everybody there is on camera, and everybody who works there, like the dealers, everybody, they're all trained in CPR. So as a result, the survival rates of cardiac arrest in casinos is actually 53%.
Oh.
It's
Take
unreal.
your life, but take your shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, residents, it's not where we work. It's not.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that, to me, that's saying, like, we can do something. If we could do CPR, we can really increase these numbers.
Because the reason the survival rate is so good in the casinos is because there's someone right there, right in that moment, doing CPR, getting that heart beating right away.
It really comes down to time. So this is a survival curve.
Okay, so another graph here. So, along the side, it's survival percentage, right? 0 at the bottom, 100 at the top.
Okay.
And then on the bottom, you have like minutes.
And at time 0, that's like when your heart stops. And you can see every minute that passes, your chances of coming back just exponentially decreases. So, think about in New York City, we have like there's an ambulance on every corner. As you guys know, it keeps you up all night. And the average response time in New York City is 5 minutes and 53 seconds. And that's
pretty
great,
good.
right?
Yeah, that's
great.
pretty good.
But look at where that puts you on this graph.
Oh yeah, not
Right,
good. Not so
yeah,
good.
not so good. You're at like between 10 and 20%. You're probably at like 15% chance of survival right off the bat. And now picture you're in Nebraska or somewhere else where a good time would be 30 minutes.
Right.
So that's the problem, right? And just to put this in context, like cardiac arrest in the US happens 1,000 times every day.
No.
Yeah. So this is like dismal to me, right? Like you have 92% chance of staying dead. It's happening 1,000 times a day.
Right.
And survival is not great.
And Avir's point was, like, given that graph, the real problem is that when this happens outside of a hospital, there's just not enough time, right? The key is the person or people who are right there with them at that very moment on the sidewalk or in the house or the restaurant or whatever.
Yeah.
The only way to nudge that number is for those people to do something.
We have to squeeze the heart. We have to compress that heart. So it's actually very simple. Don't let anyone make this complicated. You have a heart sandwiched between two bones. You have a breastbone up top and you have vertebrae below it. And all you're basically doing is just sandwiching the heart between those two bones and manually pumping it.
Okay.
You know, and you can't do it forever, but this actually works. Is it fixing the problem? This is where a lot of people get confused. Is it fixing the heart? No. Is it just pumping the blood around to sort of buy you time? Yes, that's exactly what it's doing. Now, all of a sudden, your survival goes down much more gently. You're buying yourself time for someone to come in and do something about it.
Right.
So I guess that brings us to like the real question is, you know, what would you do in this situation? You know, that's the question. Because the truth is, like, when this happens out in the world, a lot of us just freeze.
Right.
You know, and I can't help. I'll be at work. You know, you'll be in the recording studio.
Right.
So it really just comes down to you guys, right? Like, what would you do? Really put yourself in that situation, because it sounds good on paper, but like, imagine you're just walking down the street and someone collapses, or you're with someone and they collapse.
So what would you do, Lulu?
If I saw someone collapse, and
Yeah.
I mean, I would call 911. I would say, does anyone else here know what to do?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd be really scared to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I'm probably so frozen. I'm probably just calling 911 and waiting and hoping and searching for someone who knows what to do.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fair, right? Because most of us haven't taken the CPR course. It's a little bit scary, feels maybe dangerous. But here's the thing about this whole event that actually felt really new and actually shook me, right? Okay, so because according to Avir, there is a new way of thinking about and doing CPR that is completely changing the game. And when we come back from break, we are going to have a couple of very special guests come up to the stage and tell a story that is, on the one hand, completely heroic. But at the same time, when you hear it, you realize just actually how easy stepping up to a moment like that can be. So just stick around. We'll be right back. Latif.
Lulu.
And we are back from break where Avir and I were on stage in New York City. We are now about to bring up on stage a couple. They're called the Glaucomfleckens.
Glaucomflecken? Is that their last name? Glaucom?
No,
Oh.
it's sort of their like nom de TikTok.
Okay.
We're bringing Will Flannery and his wife, Kristen Flannery, out to talk to us. Now, I know about him because of this guy's TikTok channel. He makes comedy videos for healthcare professionals that literally are like spread like wildfire. So this guy is like literally the Elvis of medical comedy, I swear. I mean, he's amazing. So I want to bring up Will Flannery and his wife, Kristen Flannery.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So yes, I am a internet comedian ophthalmologist, which I swear is a real job. That I made it up, but it's still a real job. If you don't know what an ophthalmologist is, though, I am an eye surgeon. So that means I went to med school and I learned everything there is to learn about the human body, the entire human body. And then I said, I don't want to do any of that. It's like, I'll just devote my career to the eyeball. And that's what so now I'm a practicing ophthalmologist, and Kristen has been with me since the beginning.
Not since birth. We're not siblings.
Not too far after. We met in college, and I went on to med school. Kristen went on to grad school. We were at Dartmouth. But our story really starts it starts a long time ago, but we're going to go to 2020. The pandemic hit, and when the lockdown occurred, my practice shut down, so I couldn't see any patients. So I had all this free time on my hands. I did start making TikToks around that time. But there were a few times where I honestly thought I might get redeployed to the hospital to help out. And do you know how bad a public health emergency has to be for someone in the ICU to be like, are there any ophthalmologists we could get up here? Now, fortunately, it didn't happen. Like, there were plenty of more qualified people than an eye doctor to go help out. But I had all this free time on my hands, making all these videos, trying to do virtual ophthalmology, which is as hard as it sounds. And then on Mother's Day in 2020, we had a wonderful day. We were at my in-laws' house. We had a nice meal out in the backyard.
Social distancing from my parents. And it was very weird, but it was nice.
we had a water balloon fight in the backyard. And that day, Kristen took a lot of photos. And those were almost the last photos that were ever taken of me. Because later that night, I had a cardiac arrest in my sleep.
At around 4:45 in the morning, I woke up to him making some very strange sounds. Fortunately, they were loud, and I'm a mom, so I'm a light sleeper. All you moms know exactly what I'm talking about. And I woke up, and I thought he was snoring. I was still really groggy. I'm not in medicine. I studied cognitive neuroscience and then education and marketing and community, basically everything but medicine. Bodies are gross. And so I thought he was snoring. I did the thing that you do, like, quit it. You're waking me up. And tried to get him to turn over and stop snoring, but he wasn't responding. And he was just something about the how he wasn't responding kind of raised a red flag, like, whoa, that's weird. And I couldn't put my finger on why, but it just didn't seem right. And so I tried a little bit harder, still nothing. And so then I started to get a little freaked out. And so I started kind of slapping his face a little bit and yelling his name. And then he still wasn't responding. And I had no idea what was happening, but I knew this isn't right. This is very bad. And so I just did the only thing I could think of to do, which was I called 911. And it was the most bizarre period of time in my whole life. I sort of, part of my brain was in the moment and just really focused on what needs to happen and just in emergency mode. And then another part was just sort of, it was almost an out-of-body experience. I wasn't the one dying, but I was the one having an out-of-body experience, just sort of watching myself and this scene unfolding, and just feeling what? This is just so wrong. He went to bed perfectly healthy. I take that back. You were not perfectly healthy. He had survived testicular cancer 2 times before that. So, he's used up 3 of his 9 lives so far, but hopefully...
I had a little bout of cancer a couple times. So.
But that wasn't anything, we had moved
I was fine.
past that. He had been completely healthy, cleared, all these things. And it just seemed so wrong that anything would be wrong with him. He doesn't have a family history of any cardiovascular incidents, really. He didn't have a personal history. So it was just the most bizarre thing. And I was leaning my head over his chest as I was calling 911. And I was sort of noticing, I don't hear anything. There's no heart beating in here. But it was just kind of that's interesting. I couldn't really fully process that at that time, but I remember taking note of that. And so then the dispatcher came on and they asked what the emergency was. And I said, my husband won't wake up. And the dispatcher asked me what I have since learned. I did not know this at the time, but I have since learned there's only 2 questions that you need to know the answer to know that it's time for CPR. And that's, is he responding to you? And of course, the answer was no. And is he breathing normally? And that word normally is very important, because I would have said, yes, he's breathing. In fact, I think I did say, yeah, he was breathing, kind of like taking these weird gasps, and then he would stop for a bit, and then he started breathing again. I've learned since then, that's called agonal respiration. It's the body's last ditch, unsuccessful attempts at breathing in air, but it's not real breath. And so that second question, is he breathing normally? The answer to that was no. So because he was not responding and he was not breathing normally, she said, I'm going to walk you through CPR. And I said, what? It didn't make any sense. But I just said, okay. And I followed her instructions. And she told me, she asked me if I could move him off the bed. We were in bed. It was the middle of the night. And so I said, well, I can't move him. I don't know, if anyone's just listening to this, you can't see this, but I have heels on. He's got a good 13 inches on me and probably 100 pounds. And more than that, I had neck surgery 4 months prior that I was still recovering from. And I said, I can't move him off the bed. And she said, okay, if you can't move him, we're just going to do it where it is. And I'm so glad I did not know this at the time, but that was bad. That was, you need a hard surface. Preferably, if you can get the person to a hard surface, do that. But I could not. And so thankfully, we do have a very firm mattress, thanks to my neck. So that was good. But she told me, put your hands on his chest, lace your fingers together, put your hands on his chest, in the center of his chest, between his nipples, and just push hard and fast. And she just counted with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just over and over and over and over for 10 straight minutes. It was May of 2020, and we lived not far from the station that responded to my 911 call, but they were in full hazmat gear. They had hoods, shields, the whole suit, gloves, everything. And so they had to wait outside of our door, put all the gear on, and then try to get in the door, which turned out to be locked, and so they had to kick it down.
Never been so happy to have structural damage to our house.
That's right. I will take it any day, if that's what it means. And so they finally, were able to do all of that. But in the meantime, that was 10 minutes of looking over my husband and the father of my 2 children, who were 8 and 5 at the time and were asleep in the very next room. And I was thinking, they cannot come in here. They cannot come in here. Because I didn't want them to see what I was seeing, because you can never unsee that. And they were so young. And I was watching him turn blue and then purple. He stopped making those noises eventually. And by the time EMS arrived, he was gray. And I saw them take him off the bed, carry him downstairs, and lay him down on the hardwood floor and hook a bunch of things up to him. And, I may not have medical training, but I have watched television. And I heard things that should be beeping. I knew this. They were making a flat, solid sound and a flat line. And I knew what that meant. And so I turned around. I remember this really distinctly, unfortunately. I turned around to go back up the stairs because I wanted to check to make sure that the children were still in their beds and weren't trying to come out. And I didn't want to see what I knew was about to happen, because I saw them take out the paddles. And as I went up the stairs, before I could even get halfway up, I heard them deliver that first shock. And I heard the way that his 6'4" all arms and legs body just slammed against our hardwood floor in a really unnatural, weird way. And from there, I just went up and I was trying to figure out anything useful that I might be able to do, or just a thing to keep busy, to keep from breaking down. And so I packed him a hospital bag and I called into his clinic to tell them, I don't think he'll be in today. You might want to reschedule his patients. And I called both of our sets of parents. And, during that time, some of the paramedics, one of them was coming up and down the stairs and giving me updates. And he told me that what had happened was Will's heart had gone into ventricular fibrillation. Did I get that right? Okay. Which is what you saw on the screen, where when they stop the heart, it just sort of shakes like this, but it doesn't actually pump any blood anywhere. And the sounds that I had heard were those agonal respirations, and that meant that his heart had stopped. And but thankfully, they were able to get his heartbeat back after they shocked him 5 times. They didn't give up on him, and their hoods and shields were fogging up, and they would have to switch off. And it was such an effort and a team effort to get him back. And they didn't give up on him, and they did get his heartbeat back. And they took him to the hospital, and I went into my children's bedroom and I asked them what they would like for breakfast.
Just to put a little bit of a different context on that from a healthcare professional, 10 minutes of chest compressions, that's an eternity. Like 2 minutes, you're supposed to pass off to somebody else because it's so hard to continue doing effective chest compressions after 2 minutes. And even I know that as an ophthalmologist. And so I still don't know how she did 10 minutes.
Oh, I know. We had just gotten a mortgage and we had 2 young children. You were not getting out that easily.
That's why.
Come back here, sir.
And so they took me to the hospital. And from my perspective, I went to bed one night. I woke up in the ICU 2 days later. I didn't have any underwear on. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I had all the testing done in the world, and we still, to this day, don't know what caused my cardiac arrest, which is not unusual for young people that have an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Often, we don't have a good answer for why it happens. And as a physician, I never once thought to myself, like when this happened, I had been a physician for like 7 years. I never once thought, hey, maybe my wife should know how to do CPR. Maybe my family members, because if something happens, I'm usually there. I'll be the one to help.
We never thought about it happening to him.
Yeah, I was the one that needed it. And I'm sure those of you here who know CPR probably have a family or friend who doesn't. And we need to support people who do it. And so we want to thank you all for being here and listening to our story. So thank you all.
Please thank the Glaucom Flecken.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
And I'm going to bring back out Veer.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So what you just heard is literally an 8% type of outcome. That is very rare, what you just heard.
But Avir says the reason it did go well, it did become an 8% outcome, is because of what Kristen did. Like those 10 minutes of keeping that heart going while she waited for the EMTs to show up, that was the crucial first step that made it possible to bring Will back, and to bring him back without any brain damage.
I'm thinking about the weird restraints about not jumping in to do a thing. And I do feel like, didn't Radiolab once even do a show where doctors themselves were like, I wouldn't want a stranger doing CPR on me because of the potential risks, which again wouldn't be necessarily everyone's call, but that there were a bunch of doctors who... Right.
So that episode, I've heard it recently. It's called The Bitter End.
Yeah.
Totally holds up. Everyone should listen to it.
Okay.
But it's a slightly different what they were talking about. What they were talking about was those were doctors talking about, let's say you're already in bad shape and something goes wrong. And if you do it in that circumstance, or even if you do it late, if you're waiting a lot of minutes and then you start doing it, that's when it leads to way worse outcomes. So it does have some risk. But Avir's point is like,
there are, downsides to it. And you got to think about it this way, like out of hospital cardiac arrest, you want to do CPR to bridge that person to get to a hospital. So for me, if it's out of hospital cardiac arrest, like I want CPR done to at least get me to a hospital. And then if they think there's nothing that can be done, fine,
So at this point, the conversation sort of turned back to like the reasons why people don't step in to do CPR.
Yeah.
And, they've done studies on this. People are afraid you're doing something wrong. Maybe they're afraid of getting sued.
Yeah.
But one of the other big fears is the fear of infection,
right.
of putting your mouth on someone else's mouth, like a stranger's mouth, right?
That brings us to what Will and Kristen were talking about, which is sort of a new form of CPR that's trying to make things a lot simpler, and it's just hands-only CPR. So normally, CPR, it's like 30 compressions, 2 breaths.
Yeah,
you gotta.
that's all I remember from learning it in high school or whatever. It's like, it's like counting the breaths and counting the pumps.
Which like I can't even. I do this for a living, and I don't understand. I don't know where those numbers came from. And like you said, you got to take a class. It's expensive. You got to get a card. Like we don't have time for that. So what they sort of invented, because they knew no one was really doing CPR, is hands-only CPR, where it's literally just push hard and fast on the chest. That's it.
Oh,
no breathing necessary.
You don't got to do any lip-to-lip, mouth-to-mouth action.
None of that.
Just
None of
push.
that.
Okay. Huh.
And they were saying, well, maybe they thought maybe this will do, it won't be as good, but maybe it'll be something. And actually, when they found out, they have been studying it now for a couple years, head-to-head trials, this is producing the same outcomes as the big fancy CPR, just pushing hard on the chest.
Whoa.
Yeah, the
Really?
breath counting,
Just
all of that
screw the
stuff. Just
lips?
forget all of that. Just literally pump, 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 pump.
And the reason is, when you're pushing on someone's chest, you're kind of squeezing their lungs a little bit. You're getting a little bit of everything.
And that feels a little less scary to do. It does.
Way less scary.
So hands-only CPR, that's kind of where we're going to be at, because I want to teach you guys how to do hands-only CPR. So if we can have Al come up. Yes, give it up for Al.
From the Red Cross, everybody.
They're from the Red Cross. They sponsored this. They're bringing all these amazing dummies. So we're going to show you guys how to do hands-only CPR right now. So what do you want to tell them?
I want to basically demonstrate CPR, hands-only CPR, and give them step-by-step instructions on how to do it.
All right. So you demonstrate. So you're going to put one hand over the other, okay? Do it in the middle of the chest, and then you're just going to push hard and fast down on the chest. You want to go about 2 inches. It's harder than it is on the movies, but you can see that right there. That's good CPR. Another thing to notice is he's not moving his arms, because that you could do it. It's just tiring. So what he's doing is sort of moving his hips like this. Use your hips as a fulcrum and go up and down, just like that. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. Thank you, Al. Basically, you just do that. Woo! Woo!
All right. Okay.
So should we take some questions?
Yeah. Are there any questions, or should we just jump into it? Well, do we have any questions?
So at this point, we took up a couple of questions from the audience, but we were basically like, now's the time. The show is basically over. Everyone's going to stand up. We're all going to practice this. We're all going to train on how to do hands-only CPR.
If you're game, we want all of you to try it.
So let's have people come up. And I just want to say that, my thinking about this is for all the modern medicine we have, at the end of the day, when it comes to this, all we really have is each other. So that's why I feel very strongly about this. We got to help each other out. So come on up.
All right, everybody, come on. Let's do it.
All right.
And it was awesome. We got a heart-shaped disco ball down.
Oh, that's great.
So it turns out the right beat for doing CPR is between 100 and 120 beats per minute. And it just so happens that the song Staying Alive by the Bee Gees is 103 beats per minute.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of perfect.
I can't act surprised because I learned this at Radiolab, and I will never forget it. It's so good. It's so good.
But it turns out it's not just Staying Alive. There's a whole playlist on Spotify that has songs that are at that exact beat, and it's called CPR Jams.
That's great. What else is on there?
Here, let me look. Okay, there's like 3 Usher songs on here.
Okay, which ones?
Yeah,
Which ones?
Burn and Caught Up. Crazy in Love by Beyonce.
Oh, Crazy in Love is?
Crazy in Love. Baby Don't Lie by Gwen Stefani.
Okay.
Hold On by Wilson Phillips. Hold On feels like that's right.
Hold on for 10 more minutes.
Texas Hold'em by Beyonce. This is a newer one.
Yeah, that
Could You Be Loved? Bob Marley and the Wailers. I Want to Dance with Somebody. Whitney Houston. Jolene. Just Want to Have Fun. Cyndi Lauper. Justin Timberlake, Rock Your Body, because what you're doing is you're rocking a body.
You sure are.
Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley.
Oh, the Rickroll song is?
The Rickroll song.
Okay, that's the one I think I might like.
Yeah, that one
channel.
almost feels easier, yeah. Take a Chance on Me
That's
by
great.
ABBA.
Man, wow. Well, thank you, Latif. Thank you, Avir. I feel empowered to just use my hands. Hands only. This is
And
great.
if anyone does save a life because of hearing this,
tell us.
Let us know.
Radiolab at WNYC.org. Let us know.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. That was great, Latif. Thank you.
Yeah. And big thanks to Will and Kristen Flannery, a.k.a. the Glaucom Fleckens. You can check them out on their podcast, Knock Knock Hi. And they're actually going on a live tour starting in August. And if you go see that, you can hear more details about their story. It's called, of course it is, Wife and Death. Thanks to the Green Space here at WNYC's home in New York City. First of all, to Jennifer Sendro, who helped us make it work at basically every stage of the process, as well as the rest of the Green Space crew, Carlos Cruz Figueroa, Chase Culpin, Ricardo Fernandez, Jessica Lowry, Sky Paolo Ross, Eric Weber, Ryan Andrew Wild, and Andrew Yanchizin. Also, thank you to the Red Cross for helping us make this happen and providing the CPR dummies, and to all the CPR trainers. We had Ashley London, Jeanette Nicosia, Charlene Young, Jacob Stable, Ty Morales, Anna Stacy, and Aditya Shekhar. And by the way, you can see a video of the entire live show in its raw form on the Green Space website, thegreenspace.org. Green is Green, where you can also check out all the other awesome live events happening at WNYC.
All right.
That's it.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Take a chance on me. Take a chance, take a chance, take a chance. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rianne, and I'm from Donegal in Ireland. And here are the staff credits. Radiolab was created by Jad Abumrad and is edited by Soreen Wheeler. Lulu Miller and Latif Nasser are our co-hosts. Drin Keefe is our director of sound design. Our staff includes Simon Adler, Jeremy Bloom, Becca Bressler, W. Harry Fortuna, David Gable, Maria Paz Gutierrez, Sindhu Na Nasamadan, Matt Keelty, Annie McEwen, Alex Neeson, Sarah Kari, Valentina Powers, Sarah Sambach, Ariane Wack, Pat Walters, and Molly Webster. Our fact checkers are Diane Kelly, Emily Kruger, and Natalie Middleton.
Hi, this is Ellie from Cleveland, Ohio. Leadership support for Radiolab science programming is provided by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, Science Sandbox, a Simons Foundation initiative, and the John Templeton Foundation. Foundational support for Radiolab was provided by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation.